Hey Colts, it's Mrs. Hladun. I am sitting on my front porch, which as I look around, I can tell needs a little bit of cleaning up, so I'll work on that next week. Anyway, sitting on my front porch, ready to read a little bit more of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Sorry if the camera is a little bouncy. It's propped on my knee right now, so we're going to see how that works for us today. I hope you had a great day and enjoyed some outside time or got some stuff done around the house, whatever is more your style. Okay, here we go. We're going to read chapters 11 and 12. And in the last chapter, Charlie found a whole dollar buried in the snow on his way home from school. And he was thinking he was going to go into the store. It was a stationery store, and buy one candy bar and gobble it up and then give the rest of the money back to his mom. So that's where we left off. So here's chapter 11. It's called The Miracle. Charlie entered the store and laid the damp dollar bill on the counter. "One Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mallow Delight," he said, remembering how much he loved the one he had on his birthday. The man behind the counter looked fat and well fed. He had big lips and fat cheeks and a very fat neck. The fat around his neck bulged out around the top of his collar like a rubber ring. He turned around and reached behind him for the candy bar, and then turned back again and handed it to Charlie. Here's a picture of that. Charlie grabbed it and quickly tore off the wrapper and took an enormous bite. Then he took another and another, and oh joy, the joy of being able to cram the large pieces of something sweet and solid into one's mouth. The sheer blissful joy of being able to fill one's mouth with rich, solid food. "You look like you wanted that one, Sonny," the shopkeeper said pleasantly. Charlie nodded, his mouth bulging with chocolate. The shopkeeper put Charlie's change on the counter. "Take it easy," he said. It'll give you a gut ache if you swallow it like that without chewing." Charlie went on wolfing the candy. He couldn't stop. And in less than half a minute, the whole thing had disappeared down his throat. He was quite out of breath, but he felt marvelously, extraordinarily happy. He reached out his hand to take the change, and then he paused. His eyes were just above the level of the counter. They were staring at the little silver coins lying there. The coins were all dimes. There were 9 of them altogether. Surely it wouldn't matter if he spent just one more. He said quietly, I think I'll have just one more of those candy bars, the same kind as before, please." "Why not?" the fat shopkeeper said, reaching behind him and taking another Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mallow Delight from the shelf. He laid it on the counter. Charlie picked it up and tore off the wrapper, and suddenly, from underneath the wrapper, there came a brilliant flash of gold. Charlie's heart stood still. "It's a golden ticket!" screamed the shopkeeper, leaping about a foot into the air. "You got a golden ticket! You found the last golden ticket! Hey, what do you know? Come look at this, everybody! The kid found Wonka's last golden ticket! There it is! It's right there in his hands!" It seemed as though the shopkeeper might be about to have a fit. "It's in my shop, too," he yelled. "He found it right here in my own little shop. Somebody call the newspapers, quick, and let them know. Watch now, Sonny. Don't tear it as you unwrap it. That thing's precious." In a few seconds, there was a crowd of about 20 people clustering around Charlie, and many more were pushing their way in from the street. Everybody wanted to get a look at the golden ticket and the lucky finder. "Where is it?" someone shouted. "Hold it up so all of us can see it." "There it is, there," someone else shouted. "He's holding it in his hands. See the gold shining?" "How did he manage to find it, I'd like to know?" a large boy shouted angrily. 20 bars a day I've been buying for weeks and weeks." "Think of all the free stuff he'll be getting, too," another boy said enviously. "A lifetime supply." "He'll need it, that skinny little shrimp," a girl said, laughing. Charlie hadn't moved. He hadn't even unwrapped the golden ticket from around the candy bar. He was standing very still, holding it tightly with both hands while the crowd pushed and shouted all around him. He felt quite dizzy. There was a peculiar floating sensation coming over him, as though he were floating up in the air like a balloon. His feet didn't seem to be touching the ground at all. He could hear his heart thumping away loudly somewhere in his throat. At that point, he became aware of a hand resting lightly on his shoulder, and when he looked up, he saw a tall man standing over him. "Listen," the man whispered, "I'll buy it from you. I'll give you $50. How about it, eh? And I'll get you a new bicycle as well, okay?" "Are you crazy?" shouted a woman who was standing equally close. "Why, I'd give him $500 for that ticket. You want to sell that ticket for $500, young man?" "That's quite enough of that," the fat shopkeeper shouted, pushing his way through the crowd and taking Charlie firmly by the arm. "Leave the kid alone, will ya? Make way here. Let him out." And to Charlie, as he led him to the door, he whispered, "Don't you let anybody have it. Take it straight home quickly before you lose it. Run all the way and don't stop till you get there. You understand?" Charlie nodded. "You know something," the fat shopkeeper said, pausing a moment and smiling at Charlie. "I have a feeling you needed a break like this. I'm awfully glad you got it. Good luck to you, sonny." "Thank you," Charlie said, and off he went, running through the snow as fast as his legs would go. And as he flew past Mr. Willy Wonka's factory, he turned and waved at it and sang out, "I'll be seeing you! I'll be seeing you soon!" And 5 minutes later, he arrived at his own home. Oh my gosh, what a lucky break that Charlie got. That dollar really turned into something special, didn't it? All right, well, here's chapter 12. It's called What It Said on the Golden Ticket. Charlie burst through the front door shouting, "Mother, mother, mother!" Mrs. Bucket was in the old grandparents' room serving them their evening soup. "Mother!" yelled Charlie, rushing in on them like a hurricane. "Look, I've got it. Look, Mother, look. The last golden ticket. It's mine. I found some money in the street and I bought 2 candy bars, and the second one had the golden ticket, and there were crowds of people all around me wanting to see it, and the shopkeeper rescued me, and I ran all the way home, and here I am, and it's the 5th golden ticket, Mother, and I found it." Mrs. Bucket simply stood and stared while the 4 old grandparents, who were sitting up in bed balancing bowls of soup on their laps, all dropped their spoons with a clatter and froze against their pillows. For about 10 seconds, there was absolute silence in the room. Nobody dared speak or move. It was a magic moment. Then very softly, Grandpa Joe said, "You're not pulling our legs, are you, Charlie? You're having a little joke?" "I am not," cried Charlie, rushing to the bed and holding out the large and beautiful golden ticket for him to see. Grandpa Joe leaned forward and took a close look, his nose almost touching the ticket. The others watched him, waiting for the verdict. Then, very slowly, with a slow and marvelous grin spreading all over his face, Grandpa Joe lifted his head and looked straight at Charlie. The color was rushing to his cheeks, and his eyes were wide open, shining with joy. And in the center of each eye, right at the very center in the black pupil, a little spark of wild excitement was slowly dancing. Then the old man took a deep breath, and suddenly, with no warning whatsoever, an explosion seemed to take place inside him. He threw his arms up and yelled, "Yippee!" And at the same time, his long, bony body rose up out of the bed, and his bowl of soup went flying into the face of Grandma Josephine. And in one fantastic leap, this old fellow of 96 and a half, who hadn't been out of bed these last 20 years, jumped on the floor and started a dance of victory in his pajamas. "Yippee!" he shouted. "3 cheers for Charlie. Hip, hip, hooray!" Here's a picture of Grandpa dancing. That's crazy, huh? He is so excited and proud, I'm sure, for his grandson. At this point, the door opened and Mr. Bucket walked into the room. He was cold and tired, and he looked it. All day long, he'd been shoveling snow in the streets. "Cripes," he said. "What's going on in here?" It didn't take them long to tell him what happened. "I don't believe it," he said. "It's not possible." "Show him the tickets, Charlie," shouted Grandpa Joe, who was still dancing around the floor like a dervish in his striped pajamas. "Show your father the 5th and last golden ticket in the world." "Let me see it, Charlie," said Mr. Bucket, collapsing into a chair and holding out his hand. Charlie came forward with a precious document. It was a very beautiful thing, this golden ticket, having been made, so it seemed, from a sheet of pure gold, hammered out almost to the thinness of paper. On one side of it, printed by some clever method in jet black letters, was the invitation itself from Mr. Wonka. "Read it aloud," said Grandpa Joe, climbing back into bed at last. "Let us all hear exactly what it says." Mr. Bucket held the lovely golden ticket up close to his eyes. His hands were trembling slightly, and he seemed to be overcome by the whole business. He took several deep breaths, and then he cleared his throat, and he said, "All right, I'll read it. Here we go. Greetings to you, the lucky finder of this golden ticket from Mr. Willy Wonka. I shake you warmly by the hand. Tremendous things are in store for you. Many wonderful surprises await you. For now, I do invite you to come to my factory and be my guest for one whole day. You and all the others who are lucky enough to find my golden tickets. I, Willy Wonka, will conduct you around the factory myself, showing you everything there is to see. And afterwards, when it is time to leave, you will be escorted home by a procession of large trucks. These trucks, I can promise you, will be loaded with enough delicious eatables to last you and your entire household for many years. If, at any time thereafter, you should run out of supplies, you only have to come back to the factory and show this golden ticket, and I shall be happy to refill your cupboard with whatever you want. In this way, you'll be able to keep yourself supplied with tasty morsels for the rest of your life. But this is by no means the most exciting thing that will happen on the day of your visit. I am preparing other surprises that are even more marvelous and more fantastic for you and all my beloved golden ticket holders. Mystic and marvelous surprises that will entrance, delight, intrigue, astonish, and perplex you beyond measure. In your wildest dreams, you could not imagine that such things could happen to you. Just wait and see. And now here are your instructions. The day I have chosen for the visit is the first day of the month in February. On this day, and on no other, you must come to the factory gates at 10 o'clock sharp in the morning. Don't be late, and you're allowed to bring with you either one or two members of your own family to look after you and ensure you don't get into mischief. One more thing, be certain to have this ticket with you, otherwise you will not be admitted. Signed, Willy Wonka. The first day of February, cried Mrs. Bucket, but that's tomorrow. Today's the last day of January. I know it is. Cripes, said Mr. Bucket. I think you're right. You're just in time, shouted Grandpa Joe. There's not a moment to lose. You must start making preparations at once. Wash your face, comb your hair, scrub your hands, brush your teeth, blow your nose, cut your nails, polish your shoes, iron your shirt, and for heaven's sake, get all that mud off your pants. You must get ready, my boy. You must get ready for the biggest day of your life. Now, don't overexcite yourself, Grandpa, said Mrs. Bucket, and don't fluster poor Charlie. We must all try to keep very calm. Now, this first thing to decide is this. Who is going to go with Charlie to the factory? I will, shouted Grandpa Joe, leaping out of bed once again. I'll take him. I'll look after him. You leave it to me. Mrs. Bucket smiled at the old man and then turned to her husband and said, How about you, dear? Don't you think you ought to go? Well, Mr. Bucket said, pausing to think about it, no, I'm not sure that I should, but you must. There's no must about it, my dear, Mr. Bucket said gently. Mind you, I'd love to go. It'd be tremendously exciting. But on the other hand, I believe that the person who really deserves to go most of all is Grandpa Joe himself. He seems to know more about it than we do, provided, of course, that he feels well enough. Yippee! Shouted Grandpa Joe, seizing Charlie by the hand and dancing around the room. He certainly seems well enough, Mrs. Bucket said, laughing. Yes, perhaps you're right after all. Perhaps Grandpa Joe should be the one to go with him. I certainly can't go by myself and leave the other three old people all alone in bed for a whole day. Hallelujah, yelled Grandpa Joe. Praise the Lord. At that point, there came a loud knock on the front door. Mr. Bucket went to open it, and the next moment, swarms of newspaper men and photographers were pouring into the house. They had tracked down the finder of the 5th golden ticket, and now they all wanted to get the full story for the front pages of morning papers. For several hours, there was complete pandemonium in the little house, and it must have been nearly midnight before Mr. Bucket was able to get rid of them so that Charlie could go to bed. All right, and here's the picture of them talking about who's going to go. Can you guys see that? Yep. There's Grandpa Joe and Mrs. Bucket and Mr. Bucket and little Charlie. All right, it's going to be a great adventure for Charlie and Grandpa Joe. Tomorrow we'll read a couple more chapters about the next one's titled The Big Day Arrives. So it'll be a really fun couple of chapters for us to read. I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope you're being awesome and respectful and responsible to your parents and siblings. I miss you guys a lot, and I can't wait to see you soon, all right? Let me know what you think of the stories. You can put something on my YouTube channel, or you could send me a message through Facebook or email or whatever works best for you. But know that I miss you. I'll see you guys later, all right? Take care, Colts. Bye.